Namaskar, Nilesh here in another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. In this session, we are going to look at the retrograde motions of Venus and Mercury, the inner planets. This is part 9 or session 9 in this Shraddha and Pradnya series. We have already looked at the retrogression motions of Mercury. Sorry, we did not look at Mercury. Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, the outer planets or so-called superior planets. In this session, we will look at the retrograde motions of inner planets, Mercury and Venus. Inner planets because their position is between the Earth and the Sun. This chart quickly shows you the synodic period, the time between two retrogradations of each of these planets, given in days, given in months, and when actually it goes retrograde, how long it goes retrograde, which is to say, goes in the backward direction. We should only focus on the top 5 visible planets, visible to the naked eye: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And those descriptions for those 5 planets, the Mahabharata text descriptions appear with their specific name identified. There are 3 instances when Mahabharata text is referring to 7 planets in the vicinity of the sun, seen 7 planets going away from the sun, and 7 planets attacking the moon. All 3 instances happening, 2 of them happening during the Mahabharata war itself, and 1 instance happening just few days before the Mahabharata war began. Okay, that's a different issue, in which case we have to consider Uranus, Neptune, and even Pluto. If we have to explain that observation, if we have to comprehend that observation, if we have to empirically understand that observation. But as far as the Mahabharata text descriptions of planets are concerned, with specific name mention, for example, name for Mercury. Now, Mercury is mentioned with the different names, and we will look at that when we go through the evidence. And it's all there in my book, guys. Venus, same thing for Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So let's look at the retrograde motion simulations for Venus and Mercury. All right. So let's begin with Mercury. Mercury is the planet within the solar system closest to the sun. It completes 1 round around the sun in 88 days. The line that you see is the line that is drawn specifically to explain, demonstrate, allow you to visualize the retrograde motion of Mercury. So Mercury is going to go around the sun at its orbital period. Earth is going to go around the sun at its own orbital period, 365 days. And let's notice how and when the Mercury retrograde occurs and what are their relative positions. So let's begin. As I said, Mercury is going to complete 1 circle around the sun in 88 days. So Mercury has to come, say, approximately here again, where my arrow is. Okay, approximately. So somewhere there, Mercury completed 1 circle. And guess what? Now it made that retrogression. So what does it do? It makes a loop. Now notice when it does it again. When it goes retrograde, it is closer to the Earth. So it's practically between the sun and the Earth. This is true for all planets, whether inner planets such as Mercury or Venus, or outer planets such as Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. What is consistent for all of them? That they are closer to the Earth. Okay, one of the closest position that they have to the Earth does occur during their retrograde motion, and therefore they appear big during their retrograde as seen from the Earth. The effect is more pronounced in case of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in comparison to Mercury and Venus, because as such they are bright. But if you notice, you will see that during retrogression they appear big, they look big as seen from the Earth. I already mentioned that when they go retrograde, let me clear the track. When they go retrograde like this, okay, Mercury is between the Sun and the Earth. It also does one more thing, if you noticed, which is unlike the superior planets. All superior planets, when they go retrograde, practically all the time when they are in retrogression, they are visible from the Earth during the night. Why is that? Because their position is in opposition to the Sun. Okay. On the other hand, when Mercury or Venus, which are inner planets, when they go retrograde, like notice now, okay, it crosses the Sun from one side to the other as seen from the Earth. Okay, so think of that from the east to the west. So it is coming east and then now it's going backward. And that's what retrograde motion is, right? So actually it crosses the Sun. So during the retrogression of Mercury or Venus, actually what happens is that for some time we notice that it has slowed down as their journey towards the east direction against the reference nakshatra frame. Then they have turned backward, which means as if like they're approaching the Sun as seen from the Earth, and then they disappear. They get so close to the Sun that we cannot see them, Mercury and Venus. And after some time, they appear on the other side. Now, when they appear on the other side, how are we going to notice them? Well, when they are to the east of the Sun, we are going to observe them after sunset. When they cross the Sun, they go in retrogression and say they cross the Sun and go on the other side. We are going to see them now in the morning. Okay, but they will be still going backwards against the nakshatra frame. After some time, they will stop and now they again start going forward. Okay, so those are the motions to notice. Let's do this for Venus. So let me pause it. Let me clear the track. Let me reset this. Let me select Venus and let's go. So these are the lines for the 27 nakshatras. If I want to put the labels, I can. It just makes it too crowded here. So I'm going to remove them. And let's look at Venus retrogression. Very similar to Mercury. Just the duration between two retrogradations is much longer, about 18 months. Otherwise, everything's similar. When it goes in retrogression, Venus will be closer to the Earth and between Sun and Earth, and it will also cross the Sun, which is to say it starts going backward in the sky towards the Sun. After some time, we will not able to see Venus because it's very close to the Sun, and then it emerges on the other side, west side. And once that happens, we will able to observe Venus in the morning before sunrise. All right, let me clear the track here. Couple of things I want you to notice in this case. If you notice the retrogression of Mercury, its position is very close to the Sun, and as seen from the Earth, all it's doing is making a quick circle, like not circle, a parikrama, like a elliptical shape, you can say. In case of Venus, that is also true for Mars. Actually, it is true for all planets. It's just that in case of Mars and Venus, the effect is so pronounced and very easy to notice. So notice here it made a loop of some kind. Okay. So let's look at the different shapes Venus can create and Venus does create when it goes retrograde. They are very important. I'm going to clear the tracks. So it doesn't always make a loop in the sky. It can create a shape like a soft Z or like a S. Venus does that, Mercury does that, and of course, they also make a loop. Now, as you get more into this, if you notice Jupiter retrogression, you will also realize that Jupiter also makes a soft S shape or like a shape like a Z or a Z, and also a loop. Okay, that has to do with relative position of the three bodies, the Earth, the specific planet we are looking at, and the sun. Now let's look at the retrogression here. Notice the kind of shape it is generating here. Okay, I cut the previous track. Otherwise, just imagine that track coming there. It's like a Z drawn backwards. Okay, that's the kind of shape it created. And the reason I am showing you the different shapes created by Venus retrogression is because when the Venus retrograde, Shukra retrograde, is described in the Mahabharata text by Bhagwan Vyasadeva, occurring at the time of the Mahabharata war. Now, when I say at the time of Mahabharata war, everything is not happening during those 18 days. In fact, some instances are happening during the 18 days. Other instances are happening before those 18 days, before the war began. And some instances that are described are happening after the war ended. In fact, we have to look at a time interval of, say, the year of the Mahabharata war, 5561 BCE, plus minus 1 year, plus minus 2 year. Again, I just keep on saying this. Not that I am saying I need to go plus minus 2 years to show this, but to give a proper benefit of doubt to other researchers, we should be willing to give them plus minus 1 year or even plus minus 2 years. Okay, sometime we just, all these phenomena are happening on their own cycles. So notice what happened here. Venus came there, turned southward, because think of the direction above as a north, made a loop and made a retrogression, turned southward in this case. It did not create a Z shape, okay, this time. It made a loop, but it made a loop by turning southward. And why is that important? I'm going to explain that to you in a minute. Now let's wait for its next retrogression. I keep on clearing the track so that when it actually happens, you don't have to confuse what exactly the shape it created. Now it's going to create a loop. It's coming, Venus is coming closer to the Earth there. All right. I thought it was going to do retrogression. It's still, Venus has to still catch up with the Earth now, somewhere there. Okay. All right. Notice what it's doing now. So it came, slowed down, turned northward. It turned backward, but by turning north. Okay, I'm going to pause it. Then it completed this loop. And now it's going again in the forward motion. And it completed this loop as if like making a parikrama, making a pradakshina in the mandir, in the temple that we do. Now, why is this important? Remember, we looked at Venus doing retrogression by creating a soft Z or a sharp Z-like shape or Z backwards in the sky. It may create similar shapes. We also looked at some other interesting loop that it created. We also noticed before this, it created a loop, but by turning downward or southward and then completing a loop. In this case, it came to this position and turned northward, came up and went backward and made a loop. The kind of retrogression that Shukra or Venus did at the time of Mahabharata war, as recorded by Bhagwan Vyasadeva, refers to this kind of loop. The description is like this: Shukram proshtapade purve samaruhya vishampate uttaretu parikramya sahita pratyudikshite. So Shukra, that is Venus, proshtapade purve, purva proshtapada, which is the name of Bhadrapada, proshtapada for Bhadrapada, purva Bhadrapada. Now somebody will say, oh, I never heard proshtapada. If you did not hear it, you are right. You need to go back to any online source if you find one. If not, at a book form source of ancient Indian astronomy, become familiar with the various names that these nakshatras have. Now, if that is the doubt, oh, are you sure that Purva Proshtapada, Proshtapade Purva is a Purva Bhadrapada? That's a great doubt, but then you have come to the wrong forum. You have come to the wrong video. If that is your doubt, it's a reasonable doubt, but that is something that you have to clear on your own before you come to enjoy the Mahabharata evidence. Okay? Because this is something well known and it's part of the background knowledge. Okay? So Shukra retrograde is described in the Mahabharata text as Shukram proshtapade purve samaruhya vishampate uttaretu parikramya sahita pratyudikshite. Shukra came near Purva Bhadrapada and basically made a parikrama by turning northwards and completed a parikrama. That is how Vyasadeva has described the retrograde motion of Venus. Okay, that's it, guys. So let's see you in another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. And so now that we are familiar with 8 specific references of Mars, now that we understand what the retrograde motion means for all the visible planets, okay, so Mercury, Venus, 2 inner planets, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, outer planets, we will get back to looking at specific references of Mars, and we will begin with the retrograde description and reference of Mars from the Mahabharata text in our next episode. Namaskar.